Hey, that's it. We're live. That was really
Okay.
quick today. Sometimes it takes a while. Today is Saturday, the 16th of February, 2019. I don't know how many people are in the chat room, but hello, chat room. And on our panel today, we have Wide Awake. Hello, Wide Awake.
Hello.
Hey, it was really good. I met you yesterday, so I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have met you already and had a bit of a chat last night. But really pleased that you've come on Sun and Moon. Really like a lot of the footage that you do. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me too.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I was a bit worried whether you were going to make it on. He's saying I'm not very good at computers.
I really am not. The technical stuff is beyond me a lot of times. I have a couple friends that have come over and helped me, uh, learn some things. But most of the video making I learned from, I'll give them the credit, was Q and Fee. We were friends. I think all the way back to 2016, and then I made a video saying the sun never sets on flat Earth, and for some reason he got mad at me and just totally wouldn't talk to me. So I was like really stunned by this. So, but everything else I've learned on video making, I've learned on my own. I mean, he just showed me the basics. So, props to him for showing me that. But um, down with him for throwing me under the bus when I thought he was a true friend.
Yeah, we all have people a little bit like that, David, by the way. Sorry, Wide Awake's name is David. So I'm going to cross between Wide Awake and David, but that's what you learn in this flat earth thing. Still dog eat dog in flat earth. So yeah, I understand. It's a bit heartbreaking, isn't it, when you trust these people and then these things happen. But the
Yeah.
family moves on. We move on as a family, I think. That's what has to happen.
Well, that's it. If you don't agree with somebody, that's fine. But there's a lot of flat earth channels that I don't agree with some of the stuff that they put out, but I don't go on their channel and tell them blah 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 blah. I just let it go, and I just do my own thing. And people can look at what they show and look
They
at what
can
I
say what
show.
they like. You've seen it through your camera.
That's correct. That's correct. And I have my own theories and my own ways of thinking about things. But again, I don't go on their channel and troll them and say that, hey, you're doing everything all wrong. I have went on some and said, look, you're out of focus, but that's about all I say. I don't really try to get in an argument with them because
Yes, you're a gentleman, aren't you?
well, some say yes, some say no.
So just asking then, how long have you been into your photography? Because obviously you said that you got a bit of help, but how long have you been?
um, I got my P900 in 2016. I can't remember what month it was, but I my first videos were I think early 2016. Um, but I deleted some of them off of YouTube because I didn't agree with them. After I learned how to use this camera a little bit more and learn how to focus, I realized that some of my star videos were way out of focus. Like everybody else that gets that camera, don't really know how to focus it in. And once you do, you say, wow, and you you have to go back to some of your videos. And like I was telling you last night, I had over 25,000 views on this one, and I hated to delete it, but I deleted it because I knew it was wrong.
Yeah. So was it a bit of a shock for you when you started using your camera and seeing things differently?
Oh, most definitely, because what I see with my own eyes as I'm, say, filming is, I see these little tiny, what looks like grains of sand. They're little black dots just rolling out on the horizon. And then when I zoom in with my camera, I noticed some days I would get them sitting perfectly in the water. on good visibility
Hey,
days.
are you talking about? I know what you're talking about because I noticed it. Remember, I've just told you before we came live. We was telling you about Robert Forsh because he's got a P900 and a P1000, and he's a friend. Obviously, I talk to him quite a lot. But I noticed that when I was zooming in on the footage on the sea, what everybody thinks is glistening on the water, sparkle, sparkle, they're not. There are other things going on there. These things are darting all over the water.
Oh yeah, and that's if you're
You know
talking
what I'm
about
talking about, don't you? Those little things, they're
the
electrical.
light glitter, the light glittering off the water.
Yeah. It isn't though, is it? It's something else. Some of these things, I slowed the footage down and I was looking at them and they'd be jumping all across the screen. And people, you know, like just say I'm a nobody and I don't know anything about flat Earth. I look out to the ocean and I think the sun is glistening on the water, but there's something else going on there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff happening out over
Everything's
the
electric,
water.
isn't it? Electricity. It's electric, electromagnetic. It's all this going on all the time on everything.
Oh yeah, and I think that's partly what prohibits our vision. Um, you know, it obscures our vision, is what I should say. It's like putting up a blind. Like I was sitting there one day at Pine Island, actually just a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, look at there. I said, usually I can see these islands. There was a lady up on this, there's a little observation deck at Pine Island, and there was a lady sitting up there, or standing up there, I should say. And I mentioned the islands that normally you can see the whole island sitting out of the ground or sitting on top of the water. And I said, look at today. I said, it's hazy and it's all being mirrored out. And she goes, well, that haze is just illuminated atmosphere. And I was like, what do you mean illuminated atmosphere? She goes, yeah, it's all the water molecules in the air getting illuminated by the sun, which blocks your vision. And I was like, whoa, you know, and I actually didn't have my camera on audio. I actually wasn't filming at that time. I was picking up my equipment because I was heading home. And I was like, man, I wish I would have had my camera rolling, because that would have been perfect to have somebody, total stranger, say this. But later after I started
I know
talking,
you need to have your camera on 24/7 now, don't you, just to capture everything?
well, at least some of the audio, because I've talked to several people out there at Pine Island that, you know, well, this one particular lady, she was a science teacher. And I asked her, you know, how she knew that. And she goes, well, I'm a science teacher, and we know that our atmosphere gets illuminated. And she goes, it kind of creates like a blind and you can't see but so far. And we got into talking about visibility. And I said, yeah, I said, I notice that when I have better visibility, I said, I can see much farther. And then I brought up, um, you know, science says a man standing 6 foot tall underwater can only see about 3 miles out to the horizon. And I said, look, I've had my camera down this low, and I said, I can see those islands that are at 4.84 miles perfectly sitting in the water. And she just kind of got upset and clammed up and wouldn't, you know, it was like she didn't want to go any further with the conversation. And I had another woman, a young lady that was a science teacher, and when I brought up flat Earth, she literally got up and ran away. Yeah, it was kind of strange, because
When
at
you
first,
say anything that's not like the globe norm, then you know people ding.
yeah, this guy's a nut. I'm going to run away from him, because, well, why do we? You know, I always say, well, why did I ever think I was on a globe? What was the main purpose why I thought I was on this spinning ball? I mean, main reason. What was it? And I just go back to science. You know, my science teacher told me that I live on a spinning ball. Right from first grade, walking into the school, my first day, asking the teacher, because she had a globe sitting on her desk, what's this? You know, it was a ball. And, you know, boys are like, hey, it's a kickball, you know, but no, it's a globe.
Where's the ball? Where's the ball?
Yeah, oh, you live on this thing. Okay, you know, I'm there to learn, right? So you just accept it without question, because, you know, basically, again, we think that all these people before us were taught by somebody before them that knew everything. So we just accepted it without really ever questioning it. And I never questioned it for 50 years.
Well, it's the same sort of thing for me. It's hit me now, in the last few years, rather than when I was younger. But we just believe everything we're told, aren't we? And we're taught, we're programmed.
Yeah, and it is a program. And they even tell you it's a program, you know, just like we used to get you know, it was called the TV program, and then they went and changed it to the TV guide, showing you, you know, what's playing on what day, you know. But it's all a program. Television's a program. It's television. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just giving you a virtual hug now. Exactly, television. Tell a lie on a vision.
Oh yeah, and the
Cool.
lies go deep. That's what gets me is,
Cool. It's
you know,
cool
the
because
lies go
there's no
so deep.
science. There's no science. Everything's a lie.
Yeah, it seems like everything was based on a theory, you know, or Aristotle tested the curvature of Earth with two, you know, between a well and you know, 500 miles away. Well, honestly, you would get that on a flat surface too, depending on where the sun is. If the sun's closer than what they're claiming, you'll get the same identical results with a sun about what, 35,000 or 3,500 miles away.
Can I tell you something? People like you, Dave Marsh, Robert Force. He actually just messaged me. Then he must have through the ether know I was mentioned his name. What do you explain to people when you watch the sun disappearing in front of you? I mean, what do you say to people? What is it?
Well, I tell them, I said it's really kind of like a
Or
light on a parallel line to the Earth, and it's not going over the curve. It's just getting farther and farther away. And the biggest thing is well, why doesn't it change size? That's always the big thing by the globe people, is why doesn't it get smaller and smaller and smaller? Well, what are we looking through? The lower it gets, we're looking through more and more and more and more of the atmosphere, which in turn is full of water molecules, and we know water magnifies things. So even on some of my videos where I do you know, like time lapses, you'll see actually the sun will flash, and I think that's where it keeps continuing to get larger and larger and larger as it maintains the same size by magnifying the farther and farther away it goes.
actually, I've got somebody else I'm going to put forward to you. His name is Stan Smith. I'm going to send you a couple of his videos of the stuff that he's doing. He's using 360 goggles to put his information in and track the moon across the sky, and it's quite unbelievable. And as far as he can see, the sun and the moon, they come out of the ground and they go into the ground through when he's doing all his stuff. Stan Smith's really amazing as well. We've got Sandra P900. I'm going to pass all these people. Do you know Sandra P900?
Oh yeah, I love her work. I love her observation. She does some terrific stuff.
Okay, so you know her, but I'll pass you the other few people's channels, and they're just good to have there. They're doing the same thing as you. But I mean, this thing dematerializes in front of you. I mean, that's just, I just don't know what to explain to people what the sun is anymore.
Well, I like to use basically, you see a lot of the mirroring that occurs, where on days where there's a lot of mirroring, the sun just vanishes into its own reflection. And then I've gotten days where the visibility was so clear that you don't see this mirroring until it gets, you know, I don't know how to explain it. It's like the whole sun gets completely out of shape. It's, to me, it's already reflecting its own image, and it's just getting farther and farther away. But on the edge where we call it the horizon, I think it's actually up a lot higher, than what we think or what we see. Again, it's kind of hard to explain.
That because it might be in another dimension really, but we see it in the third dimension, so it's in other dimensions, and but that's how we see it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like it's a projection on a on the, I don't know if you want to call it the dome. I mean, some people want to call it the dome. And I think if there is water above, there would have to be a divider. There would have to be a barrier between us and what's above us.
Yeah, I do struggle with that one myself because,
Yeah.
you know, I told you I've got obviously people who, you know, there's Dave Marsh, there's Robert, there's all these people, there's even Sandra. You know, you you see that sun in the clouds and stuff like that, but obviously when you see high altitude footage, the sun is in the black and it doesn't light the black up.
Let me bring this up. I was watching or researching about some observatories, right? And how they calibrate their equipment. And they have these big old laser beams, right? And they send this laser beam up into the sky. And then they take their, big old telescope and they, zoom in on it out there. And then they calibrate their computers or their equipment by um, where that beam ends. So there is an ending point to where these laser beams end. Are they hitting something up there that's causing, like where the stars are? Because if they're calibrating it by that, then that means that there's an ending point or a stopping point. There's a barrier there, whether it's atmosphere or whether it's a dome. There's something there that it's hitting.
Well, I'll tell you from research on this channel, he's gone a bit quiet right now, but he was called Weedy the Doc. And then he cancelled his channel because he's into free energy and all that. So I think he's worried for himself. But he used equipment, scalar waves, and the scalar waves went up and they came back immediately. So he thinks the firmament is a frequency, at least. Not sure if it's solid, but it's definitely a frequency. And that stops everything.
Yeah, and I can't say what I think it is or anything because I haven't been up there. I haven't been able to touch it, feel it, see it. So, if I make an assumption, it would be just an assumption and not an actual, proof of anything. And there's a lot of people out there to say that there's a firmament. Okay, I'm not saying that there's not. I am saying that there is a barrier of some sort. And like you said, if it's a frequency, yeah, something could reflect off of that frequency. Have an ending point or it be a barrier of some sort.
We're living in quite a supernatural place, aren't we? I mean, it is basically like a computer game. The whole thing comes up as if you're in a game. You know, when the game comes up and they're walking and stuff, and the land appears and it keeps appearing on the screen. That's kind of what we're living in.
I think that they've used video games really to give us a true perspective of, I think it's the opposite as far as, do we live in a digital simulation? I think that, we have simulations that we can play that we should be looking at with our own eyes and saying, wait a minute, this is what I see in reality. So as I'm walking and everything that's out in the distance seems to pop up, does it mean that I'm walking over a curved surface? No, because when you look at how these digital games are made, even on a flat surface, everything looks like it pops up because everything's resolving better as the closer you get to it. So it does rise up. And that's perspective too, because anything going further and further away from you gets smaller. And then as it comes closer to you, it gets bigger. And all you got to do is go stand out on a highway one day and look at a car out in the distance, as it comes to you, of course it gets bigger. It's not too hard to figure out perspective.
Yeah, you do nearly all your photography over the water, don't you?
I do a lot over the water. I've done a bunch of road where, you know, you see the miraging, mirroring, and I use that to study to compare it to what I see on the water. And there's a lot of resemblance to it too. How a car that goes into this mirage, it will vanish within its own reflection, and that's the way I see the sun almost on every one of my videos. I just see the sun vanishing into its own reflection.
Yeah, also, I was obviously been watching your stuff lately. Well, anyway, I watched your stuff anyway, but you were talking about obviously that when you're filming miles out, you've got all this compressed water in front of you. That is really strange. We were talking about that a bit last night, that, you know, there's miles of water, but it just looks like a bit of water in front of you, but it's miles of compressed water.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I was, you know, I use a board to that I put on one of my videos. I just took a board. It's like 7 foot tall, and you know, you look at this board from straight on, you can see that it's, you know, how long it is, how wide it is, and then as you lay that board down flat out in front of you, and if you've got your camera set level with it, but when you get down to where it's level and you're looking straight across it, that whole board looks like a little sliver that's compressed. You got 7 foot in that tiny little sliver. Well, it's the same thing when we're out on the water. The further out I'm seeing that water, it gets to a point where your camera just can no longer resolve it, because it would be like taking that board and, you know, say it's 7-10 miles, or even more, because I think we're seeing a lot farther across the horizon than we think we are, but it's just obscured by the atmosphere, the mirroring, the illumination of the atmosphere. There's so many things that's going to obscure our vision that we won't be able to see, but to that certain point. Now, take that board, like I was saying, and if you have anybody that wants to test something for themselves a little bit, if you take a board, and say you can find a real long one, take and put about a 1/2 inch gap in it and lay another board on top of it, and then get down level with it. And you'll see eventually how that top board will pinch off the end, and you won't even see light. If you get a long enough board, you won't even see the light in it if you get down flush level with that bottom board, because it pinches off your horizon, just like looking down the long hallway, where everything just, you know, tunnels into one little point.
Can I ask you something else? Just came to my mind then. There's have you heard of Enslaved by No Media?
Yes.
You know that you know, like, distances aren't what they are, and then when you actually hold your camera up to see something the same size as you're seeing it, you actually have to zoom the camera in. What's your thoughts on that? That the camera isn't actually representing what you're seeing until you,
Mag
but it zooms in. It zooms in further than you can see, and further out. You know, it zooms further into things and zooms further across things. That bit's great. But what's your thing about what it's actually, you know, because it's not giving you a representation of what you're looking at when you first look at it. You've got to zoom it.
I really think it's more magnification, because I've looked at, when I first got my P1000, I went out to Pine Island, and I zoomed in on them islands, and man, oh my God, it was like they were right in front of my face. It was like I had to back off because I was so zoomed in on them. It was like, wow. And they're 4.8 miles away. And then on days where, you know, all of a sudden I had better visibility, I zoomed in on it and they looked smaller. Now, why did they look so big the first time? Because again, there was a lot of humidity in the air, which magnified them, which made them just kind of look like they were a lot closer. That's so I watched the video where he brought that up, and I said, no, I didn't agree with it, because he wasn't taking into consideration that he could be getting some major magnification.
We've had I a GoPro Flat Earth Darb, Keith is in the chat room. We went to this place up the road from me. It's called Silbury Hill, but it's actually a pyramid. But we'd actually walked round it, and we were with Costa, who was on the other day on the channel. But we got back to the car park, and then we were looking, and I reckon we probably were somewhere like getting on for about a quarter of a mile away from the pyramid now. We weren't a big distance, but we were a distance. And we looked over, and this pyramid, which is across a field on the other side of the field, it had grown so big, it looked like it was touching the fence. Yet there's a field between that. It looked like the pyramid had grown. We weren't that far away from it, but the thing had grown like it was enormous.
I recently just watched a video about that, how a guy was taking a picture of a stone, and there were some other stones behind it that were small. And you know, his first picture of it, you could see these smaller stones, but then he was using a wide angle camera, and then he went to a zoom camera and he took another picture, and basically the other rocks in the background jumped up and looked like they were all bigger than what they actually were. And he said that's kind of like, man, I wish I had the video. It was actually brought to me by a guy named Mendel, which is, he's a globe believer. He brought me that for proof of how this is like refraction or something, but it's not. It's just something in the background is being brought forward because you're using a zoom camera. In other words, it makes it look bigger.
Even the mobile would do the same thing then.
I think possibly it would, if you're, because most of the you know, cell phone cameras got wide angle lens on them. You know, they take a wide picture.
But the thing is, it seems to at certain points makes things bigger, and then other times it can make things smaller than they actually are.
Yeah, I think it's wow. Again, I've been out there at Pine Island and videotaped those islands, and I thought, wow, I'm at full zoom, but the islands looked further out there, and I said, now I can see much better. I mean, the visibility was so clear, you could really see more detail, but everything looked farther away. Was I actually getting a lot less, you know, atmosphere between me to magnify that and bring it in? And it's like what Rob Shakiba shows with the magnifying lens, the magnification, or they call it lensing. You know, as you draw something back, it looks like it sinks. Is that what we're seeing? I think that has a big role in how you know, zooming in on something actually does. If it's magnified, it actually like pulls things down.
I think the question is, if it's doing that on something that isn't so far away, what's it doing when you're filming across water? Is land very different? Obviously, land's very different to film on against water, isn't it?
Yes. I have some footage that I took. Oh, what was it, back in I think it was 2017, where I was on the islands that I'm always filming, and there's a place called Hudson Beach, and I was able to see every single one of the floors, and I'm almost 11 miles away. My camera was about 3 feet off the water, and I was able to pick up everything but the bottom floor. And the reason why I think I couldn't see that bottom floor is more of compression, because you could literally see the land that these buildings were set on. So, you know, I was picking up the trees that were in front of them. I even went down there and took video of the building at a closer range. And then when I compared them, I noticed that the only floor I really couldn't see was the very bottom floor. Now, was that being obscured by the land out in front of it? because I was at such a low angle, or was it being hidden because there's a curve? Number one, I shouldn't even have seen uh, none of the trees or the land that that building was set on. That should have been all cut off, and I should have only been seeing, you know, probably about 5 to 6 floors of that building, but I was seeing pretty much all of the buildings.
Hmm. And I was asking you a bit about that. You've done a lot of photography, haven't you? And trying to see how much you can see into that vanishing bit that happens in that bit where, if we could see further, but obviously there's just this mirroring, isn't there, that happens. And when once the boat goes in there, you can see it for a while and then it'll just vanish. You just can't, because there's a vanishing point.
Oh yeah, the vanishing point. I always like to say that that mirroring line or that hard water line moves back and forth depending on your visibility. If you have really good visibility, that mirror line or that hard visible water line moves well out. Because I know a lot of the channel markers out there, and there's a from Bayport where I started doing most of my filming. There's a halfway marker that's about a mile, mile and a half. It's actually, I think it's closer than the halfway point, but it marks some major rocks on each side of it for boaters not, make sure they don't go outside of that. And there's also a big turn there. Well, I've videotaped that where I'm up on a seawall. My tripod's all the way up to 5 feet, a little over 5 feet, depending on which tripod I use. But the hard water line was well in front of this marker, and this marker looked like it was floating in the air. And then other times I've been there with my camera down lower with the water up higher, the tide higher, and I can see water well beyond that same marker, which in turn, basically once you start studying and testing these things, you see them, and you say, well, why am I able to see farther this particular day than I did on another day? Why was it mirroring way up front and that hard water line was well in front of them, and everything that went beyond that point was just mirrored, and like the boats would go out in that mirror and they would just kind of distort real bad, go into a little blob and then vanish. And other days I could follow that same boat for miles and miles and miles all the way past the Bayport bird rack and beyond. I've got some boats that have gotten very, very
away? How many miles away is that then?
The Bayport rack from it's the Bayport Park. There's two parts to it. The fishing pier, it's about 3.5 miles. And I've followed boats well beyond that 3.5 mile mark. And where you say that, how that water gets compressed, I've seen water well beyond the bird rack, and then I've seen water that's not. It's like right at the bird rack, but a boat will get on there and just do nothing but get smaller and smaller and smaller until it kind of melts into the water. And you can't resolve it once it melts into the water and it gets so far out. It's just got too tiny to even see anymore.
Yeah, I was watching that as well when you're saying like this is here, but if you can see, there's water behind it, so the water just goes on and on.
Yes, and again, you talked about the compression of that water. That's what it is. It's compressed, and you're looking across a lot more miles than what you think you are. I mean, they say three miles for a man standing 6 foot tall, but I shouldn't be able to see a boat going beyond 3 miles if my camera is much lower than 6 feet.
Yeah, I don't know whether you saw any of P900. She put the camera on the beach, and she was filming the Isle of Man, the other side. and it was actually lying on the beach, and the only thing you could see was some of the waves were in front of the camera every now and again, but behind that was land, and it was about 60 odd miles away.
Oh yeah. And that's why I say she's made some really good observations. And people will say, well, the globe people will say, well, that's refraction. But I don't see, I don't think your camera or something can get pulled up without you visually being able to see it with your own eyes. I don't think refraction can account for rolling up everything perfectly level and flat in front of you. I don't think that if you can't see it with your own eyes or with the camera, it's not there, but they think that it's coming up from behind the curve. That's what they say, it's refraction. And I personally think, in my opinion, that refraction pulls things down, not up. And what they call being pulled up is just visibility, allowing us to see what's actually there better.
Yeah, just to say that Sandra's in the chat room. She's in the chat room as well. That's really good. She's really pleased that you're on the panel.
Yeah, I really like her work. Especially when she does those low perspective videos. That's awesome. I live in Florida, so I don't really get a lot of days where I get really, really great visibility because, of course, Florida is known for its humidity, its heat, its sunny days. So I don't get some of the footage that some of these other people can get in different parts of the country or the world, the flat Earth, the way I look at it. That's why I really enjoy watching other people's observations, because when I compare them to mine, I say, wow, I should be able to see a lot farther than what I do at times. And again, certain times I can. I've videotaped those buildings at almost approximately 11 miles away. It was 10 point something, but I shouldn't have been able to see those. And then when I see somebody like Sandra put out her camera that's showing something, 60 kilometers away, it's like, wow.
60 miles?
Oh, it's 60 miles.
Yeah, we're miles here.
Awesome.
Just going back to this bit, so you're saying that you think the sun is higher in the sky than what we're seeing, but how do you explain a dematerializing sun on the water then? Because in a sense, just say you didn't know what you'd swear it was going into the water, but of course it's not. But they do often, when they talk about things, they put the sun below the horizon. So that's quite, what I mean? Like the thing does sort of, where does it go? What is it? It just dematerializes. It's not solid. Is it a portal?
I've wondered the same thing about the portal. And again, I always have to look at parallel lines. I was in a lot of construction work, and if all right, like storm drains, sewer drains, water lines, I installed a lot of that stuff. And you're always having to put a drop to say storm drains, because water is going to trickle right downhill all the time. So if we were on this curved surface, man, you wouldn't have to worry about putting a drop to say a storm drain, because if it's 6 inches per mile squared, oh my God, you just lay it out straight, and that water that goes into that pipe's going to just go ahead and keep draining. But no, they always have to account for a drop on any type of sewer line or drain line of any sort.
So we all have our favorite thing, don't we? One thing I've noticed about you photographers is that sound like Trouble About. She'll take pictures. The lady you met last night, she'll take pictures of all sorts, but the stars are her favorite. Then you've got Dave Marsh. He will take pictures of the sun, but his is the moon. Then we get Robert. He take pictures of the moon and the sun, but the sun is his favorite. You can just tell because of the photography. So what's yours?
Actually, all of them. I do a lot of star videos, but I never share them. I just um, I don't think I can prove anything with the stars. I do a lot of time lapse, and here lately I've been doing a lot of exposure pictures. Um, it's one thing about a lot of these cameras is they have you know, you can do the long exposures, um, and I really like those. I was doing long exposures on lightning, and man, that's pretty cool. Didn't really share none of it. Again, like the moon, the stars, the sun. I like it all. I mean, I just really love observing and taking it in and trying to figure things out for myself instead of, you know, like a lot of the globe people say, oh, you know, you learned everything from YouTube. No, I don't think so. I kind of
How can
question
they
a lot
say
of
that?
stuff in.
They obviously haven't looked at your channel, have they, to say something like that?
No, no, they don't. A lot of times it's when I go to another channel and I compliment them. These trolls or globe believers, I don't know what they are. I mean, for me, I just think that they might not even be human. Um,
They
but
think it's all easy for us, don't we? I mean, we've had our whole minds blown, really. Especially like Sandra, she's still chatting away. She loves you, by the way. She's putting some very nice things in the chat room, and it was 65 miles. That's what she was filming across.
thank you,
But,
Sandra. I really appreciate your work.
oh, I've just lost the thread of what I was going to say now.
Sorry.
This, no, that's okay. It's my fault. But this, you know, like you show, I've often showed because I obviously would get out one of the disappearing suns, and these people they just don't see it. I'm sure. Say I was a globe person and I didn't know about flat Earth. When someone shows me that the moon was disappearing, that would make me think, well, I just want to go and watch that 25 more times on another video now to see if that is actually happening. That's how it starts for me. And then you end up finding that you're actually looking at footage for hours and hours and hours just to make sure. I'm sure that's what you're like.
Oh wow, you gotta see. I have so many um, files and so much video. It's crazy. I go to I go to look into there to find something I want to make a video on, and I actually get lost in my own videos because I sit there and I watch them and I watch them and I watch them, and then I'm like, wow, I was supposed to pick one of these out to make a video on, and I wound up just watching my own videos over and over again. You know, and never got around to making a video. I just get in awe with some of them because you see so many different things, um, and then you say, well, they're calling this refraction, pulling something up, but I just call it being obscured, hidden, um, within many uh, different effects. There's so many optical effects out there on the water that it blows your mind. Um, I mean, when I can see these islands out there perfectly, and you know, at 4.84 miles away, down low, and I can see people walking up the bank onto this island in this little gap. And then other days that gap is gone and everything is just mirroring in there. It's the mirroring that's hiding that whole. It's hiding within its own reflection, is what it's doing within its own mirror.
To catch the best things, is it best to be out more at dawn then? You know, when it's very early in the day.
Right at the early morning, sometimes it's really good. Just as the sun is, you know, supposedly rising. I just call it arriving and departure. Uh,
Yes.
well, that's the way I see it. You know, it arrives and then it departs our vision. And you know, anybody that works around, you know, parallel lines or doing string lines or works with perspective. Most artists know about perspective, and you know, like a globe guy, he'll say, well, you know, that's just an artist's trick. No, it's not. It's not an artist's trick. It's the way we see. You cannot see past that convergence point, that vanishing point. Once something goes beyond it, you can't see it. And then there's all kinds of reasons why that vanishing point moves back and forth. I read an article that I've been searching for almost 2.5 years to find that same article again, and I can't find it. But it was about two scientists that were, they were researching how people sometimes would see land way off in the distance certain times of the year, and they would go out to look for it and could never find it. And then other times they see land and they'd go out there and there it was, but this land was so far away that they should have never seen it with their naked eye. And the way they explained it, it was like, when you get so far out in the water, this mirroring effect actually is like taking a mirror and putting it up on a little angle, like a 2-degree angle, which reflects your, or redirects your vision upward to where all you're seeing is the mirroring of the sky. And really, that hit me right there, and I was never able to find that same article. I should have bookmarked it, but I never did, because at that time I didn't even know what a bookmark was. Again, I'm not a computer person.
Mind you,
People.
now you're actually doing the articles. You're actually doing it.
Yeah, and I'm not really a video maker either. I
You
don't
do
do a lot of
very
editing.
well. Very well. I'm sure everybody that watches your videos on your channel loves your channel, so you do very well.
Oh, it's just raw footage.
Because it's a 24-hour job day, isn't it? You've got to go there, set it up, film it, look at it, work out what you're going to use, upload it, make videos. By the time you finish, it's like 24 hours of work.
Oh yeah. And most of the time I stay up, oh wow, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes making these videos because
We're the night people
I
now,
don't
aren't we?
have the time.
We're the night people.
Yeah, and then I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready to go to work.
You sound like me, David. You sound like me. I'm the same. I get out of bed thinking, why did I do that?
Yeah, and I do it too often.
Felt good at the time, though.
But let me bring up this, because I've had people say, well, why do you show why do you show these boats that look like they're going over the curb and they're getting cut off? And I tell them, well, I don't cherry pick my stuff. I think showing the good with the bad, we can learn more from the bad than we actually can from the good visibility ones, because that's where these optical effects are occurring. It was when we had this bad visibility. So you can learn by that. And if you don't show that, I mean, I wanted to make my videos for people to learn by. And, being that I was filming from the same location, I figured people would get familiar with the location and, would pick out these, racks and say, okay, well, I can see this rack, I can see that rack, and, start learning about them, and then say, well, why is it on this one day he zooms in on the rack and you can only see half of it? Because well, actually you're seeing half of the rack and half of the mirroring effect of it. So it's like, a mirror image underneath the actual image, but half of it is missing. Where's the other half? It's again, it's hard to explain, but it's hidden within its own reflection is what it's doing. Just like we see the sun when it gets out to a certain point, it just hides itself. It's the grand illusion. It's just hiding within its own reflection.
I've
Even
got
when you have
a
days where you have
question.
good visibility.
I've got a question for you. Well, first of all, GoPro Keith says that your videos are great. Second thing is there's Enslaved by No Media. He's in the chat room right now. And he said, ask Dave, when zooming his P900 at 83 times zoom, what distance is he seeing side to side at at 3 miles, 6 miles, and then with no zoom? Distance side to side feet is 3 to 6 miles. Does that make sense to you, what I've just said?
Well, I no longer have the P900. I traded it in on the P1000 because I had a warranty on it and I had some issues with it. So, but to answer, like I was saying before, with my camera at 3 feet above the water, I was able to film um, Hudson Beach, which was a little over 10 miles away. And I could see, you know, everything. And actually at full zoom, I was pulling it. It was too much. I mean, I was actually almost looking into people's windows. And then when I zoomed back, you know, a little bit, I could see the whole buildings. I could see almost every single floor except for the bottom floor. But another thing too is that there's like a secure privacy wall that goes across that bottom floor also. So, you know, was I actually seeing the whole building and just that bottom wall blocking out the bottom floor? That could be a possibility too, being that my camera was low. Um, so side to side, you know, everybody, you know, we say we should see that curvature to the left and to the right of the camera, and I agree. If there's a curve 3 miles out, curving downward, as I pan my camera to the left and right of that same spot, I should be seeing a big hump in the water, which I'm really not. But on some days,
Just compressed water.
yeah, you know, and this is really strange. On some days I've been filming, and when I look to the north, depending on where the sun is in the sky now, I look to the north and I can see better to the north than I can see to the south. And I've been, one of my videos I was showing as I was tracking this boat that was coming way offshore. It was real small. I mean, you could see the whole boat in the water. And then as it got closer and closer to me, you could actually see its wake. You know, you could see a lot more detail. And then as it got even closer and went behind the islands, next thing I know, it's getting cut off again, but it's much bigger. But it's getting hidden. It's within that mirroring, because the angle of light also can cause mirroring on the water. It's the way that light's hitting the water that causes that mirroring effect, the miraging out. And you know, again, that's another thing that I do is I just study my own videos. And I try to really learn by them, because there's a lot of information within them, but then it's hard for me to express or explain exactly what I'm seeing going on in the videos. That's the tough part, is explaining it.
All this compressed water that you're seeing doesn't really have a bend on it, does it? It's still flat.
Yes, it's flat as the eye can see
And
out
if
there.
you're seeing something like Sandra's picked up 65 miles away, and even if, say, there was a curve, it would come back to you so different, wouldn't it? Because it would have been over the curve coming back. It's not happening.
Oh yeah, no, bring that up. I recently did a video where I was seeing north of me. There's like these 3 islands that sit out there, and you know, I'm even thinking that part of them ain't even an island. It's part of a point. It's a point that sticks out. But my camera's able to resolve them better. But I was able to see land up there not too long ago. I just recently put out the video. And this was my old fishing grounds. Well, I still fish up there, but I haven't been up there in a while. But you know, as I'm on my boat a lot of times and I'm out going fishing, man, you know, you on a good clear day, you could see all this land up in front of you. And on other days, it would be hazed out, you know, like a hazy day, and you couldn't see half of where you were going. You'd have to wait till you got to your, you know, like we had points that we used for, you know, air, like you could see this little island and I'd drive, you know, ride straight to it. That way I'd stay on my line on my GPS a little bit better, you know, having something to focus on. And then I do an awful lot of night fishing, and night fishing we were using back way before I had a GPS on my boat, and a GPS to me stands for ground positioning system. Has nothing to do with satellites, but they'll have you think so. But we would go by the phone towers that were out there. And I'm talking, we were up there fishing like 20 years ago. And you know, it was like you'd have to go by landmarks, and the satellite towers were our landmarks, and you could see the land way up there even at night, especially like on a full moon. You'd see land way out in front of you where you shouldn't have been able to see that. um Again, it's like, I fish south of those islands, and sometimes on my way back, and I'm not even anywhere near Hernando Beach Islands, I'm further south, but I can see the the lights from the Crystal River power plant, that's 27 miles away from Pine Island. So you got to figure I'm another 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 8 miles away, and I can still see the lights from these you know, power plants that are that far away. It's crazy. It really is. I shouldn't be able to see those lights at all. They should be well underneath the curvature of Earth. And that's with my own eyeballs. That's not with any camera. Did I lose everybody? Uh-oh, what happened?
I'm so sorry. I was talking away and I was muted. Sorry about that, everybody. I was yapping away. Enslaved by No Media did the same thing about when he's out and when he's filming north to filming south. He says that he can see the difference in what's happening. You know, if he's filming south, everything is bigger, and north it's not the same. Everything's smaller.
Yeah, and I'm always saying it's the angle of light plays a role in you know, how we see or what we're seeing on the horizon. Like you know, in the winter months when the sun is you know, departing further to the south. I mean, I've got some video that was like stunning. The sun, the way the sun set. It to me, again, it's not a sunset; it's a sun departure. But it's absolutely wild the different effects you can see if you just go out almost every day and just videotape the sun departing your vision or your line of sight. You will get a different effect almost every time here in Florida. You know, one day you'll see where the sun will literally mirror up, almost over half of the size of the sun will mirror up, and it would just reflect into itself. And then on those really good days of visibility, the sun almost looks like it just squashes itself. It goes oblate, and it just becomes a
Yeah.
really weird shape.
You have this video of the sun, and basically it just does all this weird compressing thing in front of you, and it goes into this really weird shape.
Yeah.
You know, it's about a week or two ago you put that on there on your channel.
That's actually very you know, again, when you start using your observations for studying, you'll start noticing certain things, and you know, for yourself, you can put it together. To express it, to explain it might be two different things, because it's kind of hard to convey your message to somebody through a video. At least for me, it is. I always like to say, let them look at the proof and let them think for themselves.
Just asking you then, do you have a lot of people who feel the same as you around you, or are you quite on your own? Because most of us with our family and friends are on our own.
I'm on my own. I don't really have anybody to help me. I might hear soon though. I recently met actually a guy that's seen me down there, and he goes, "I wonder if that guy's doing flat Earth videos." And then I guess he found me on YouTube, and he asked me if that was me, and he was here visiting his in-laws from up north, and they're thinking about moving down here, and he said he'd really like to help me out, do some experiments, help me out with observations. You know,
that's good. Can I just say, if you're in, maybe you can link up with a couple of these other people then. You know,
yeah,
Robert. North Carolina, South Carolina. He is Myrtle Beach.
I have family near there.
Yeah, it's always a bit strange, this waking up and all this stuff we're doing. It partakes us from the rest of people. It just does. And once you know all this stuff, you almost don't want to speak to a lot of the people out there. What are you going to say to them? The information. I mean, just listen to Enslaved by No Media when he talks, or you, or Dave Marsh. These people, like even Robert. Like, how do you? Most people aren't going to get this, are they? Or haven't researched, done it themselves.
Yeah, I had some footage where a guy that was, a lot of times I talk to people when they're out there, when I'm out there at Pine Island or Bayport. I'll bring it up. I'm not shy. If I think that they're kind of open-minded, I'll bring it up. Say, hey, why do they call it sea level? If it's a curve out there, and I'll get some people that'll, like I said, they'll walk away. They'll get upset and walk away. What's this guy crazy? Because I know it's a globe. I've been told it's a globe all my life. I can't prove it, but I've been told it is. Um, and that's what's funny is if you ask an average person, can you prove that we live on this spinning ball? And they'll say no. And then people will say, well, haven't you ever been up in a plane and seen the curve? Well, I've been up in many planes and I've never seen the curvature of Earth from a plane. People are sending up high altitude balloons with really good cameras on them. Dwayne Keelam does really some great work. And you don't see the curve. But I see, like, he put out one that was the infrared video where he put an infrared camera on it. People said, there's the curve. Are you mistaking the curve for our circle of view? Because we do have a circle of view. And then
Yeah,
with that circle, there is a curve.
How frustrating is that we have a 360 360 pan around everything, and the line of sight is a circle, but it isn't. The land isn't a circle.
Right. It's
annoying with our eyesight, isn't it? On that one, really.
Yeah, and that's what gets you is, you try to say, well, you're seeing what we call our circle of life, put it to you that way, our circle of view.
Can I just amend something? I made a mistake when I was talking about enslaved. Sorry, Enslaved by No Media. He's saying objects are smaller looking south. When looking south, we see less distance. Looking north, we see twice as far. So I'm just amending what I said. Sorry, that was me.
Sometimes, like I was saying, like in the winter months when the sun sets, or I hate using the word sets because, but that's what people relate to. And I like to call it just a departure.
I like that.
But I agree that, like when it's in the south and I pan my camera to the north, it seems like I could see much further to the north, but then other times I can't. But in the when we're past the equinox and the sun's going further to my north, I think it's the opposite way. I can see further to my south than I can to my north because of that angle of light again. I think that angle of light from the sun does play a big role in how we see, because put it to you this way, too much light blinds you, not enough light, you're in the dark, you can't see, and just that right amount of light, man, I mean, you can really see much further, right? I mean, everything opens up, it's visible, you can see perfectly.
Does it make any difference what you're seeing, like what the sun's doing in the morning to what it's doing after zenith in the afternoon? Does it make any difference of, like, with atmosphere and when that sun gets past its zenith thing in the sky in the middle of the day? Well, what middle of the day? Just asking.
I've had it happen both ways. I went out one day, and believe it or not, it was on it was July 21st, matter of fact, and I'll never forget that day, because usually July in Florida, it is so hot and humid here. You just, a lot of times you don't even want to go outside, because you don't even have to work and you'll sweat. But I think on this particular day, the air temperature and the water temperature were the same. And I was getting some awesome, awesome boat videos where these boats were way out there, and I was resolving them, on the water. And I did make a video that I didn't get a lot of views on it, but that's just with a lot of my videos, I don't get a lot of views on. But if you go back to that video and look at it, I mean, you see these boats way out there that are very, very small, and they are compressed on the water too. They do have this compressed look to them, like they're longer than they are tall. And I believe that's compression, and not refraction, something getting pulled up from beyond the curve. Again, you got to be able to see it in order for it to be stretched out. And that we get with like the last video I did, with this concave convex mirroring effect. And that's what I think happens, but it has to be within your vision in order for it to stretch it or compress it. It can't be over the curve where you can't see it at all to be pulled up.
Anyway, it's easy for us to say when you've got a P900, you see, you get to see such a different life, and all these other people that are going against or whatever, they haven't taken a camera and done any of it. So I just find that, yeah.
Oh, especially like with the sun, people don't see what I see when I'm zoomed in on the sun, because we see, what we're seeing with our eyes is not what my camera's seeing. So, I hear people in the background, going, like it's sinking into the water. And I'm laughing. I'm just like, no, it's just going beyond our visibility. It's going to that convergence. It's converging on the horizon. It's like the two convergence of two parallel lines. They converge, and you cannot see past that convergence point. Period. You just can't.
I never thought that I'd be going to footage to actually watch nothing there, and then basically watching a sun appear like that and then start getting bigger. I never thought that that's the kind of thing I'd be looking at myself. I mean, I know you've got a camera and you see it quite often, don't you? That it's not there and then it'll just appear.
Yeah, yeah.
How many miles away when these are you roughly seeing when that sun is materializing and dematerializing? How far away from you do you reckon that you're filming that?
Well, if if we're looking at miles, I mean, how, number one, if I'm able to see the sun, rise and fall, for say 12 hours during a certain point of the year, how am I looking through the curvature of Earth to see the sun to begin with? I mean, how come I'm seeing it for 12 hours, and then even in the longer summer months I'm seeing it for longer than 12 hours? How am I able to do that? When it's rising, is it rising over the curvature? Because I would have to be seeing through the big bump of water and land and everything else that's between me and that sun when it's over. I think when we first see it, it's like over Africa. So am I through all that curvature to see it?
Yeah. And don't forget, we're supposed to be spinning on this roller coaster ride,
Yeah, and none of us ever feel it. We don't feel the spin. We don't.
We're not moving. I know you must know, don't you? You go out there some days, even on the water, nothing's moving. It's dead still.
Water is so calm.
We're sort of in these sort of three different directions we're going with the sun, in the universes, with the moon. We're going anti-clockwise with the moon, and we're going two different directions the other way with the sun. And when you add up the speed, we're doing like Mach 80. Not one head stands up.
And you put a glass of water up there, right? And you just take a little, and tap the glass just a little bit, and that water quivers like mad, right? But how can we be spinning and and right here in front of me, the water is so calm and so smooth. It's a mirror all the way out as far as I can
You'd
see.
feel something, wouldn't you? You know, like you're saying, the water. You'd have your glass down, and then you go to the drink would be wobbling, and you'd be going, "Oh, we've just had a. There's just been an earthquake somewhere. We've just had a wobble."
Yeah, you know, when you see days where it's that calm and everything, and then you also watch the clouds. I've done a lot of cloud time lapses, and you know the clouds are all whipping one way, and then you see them switch and go the opposite. You see them going in almost every different direction. And science will say, well, that's convection. You know, it's just our clouds.
Yeah. One set of clouds are going that way, and then the higher ones are going a completely different way. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've seen the clouds. You know, where we had like 3 or 4 different cloud layers going in every which direction. And it's crazy to think that we're on a spinning ball and we can have this reaction with our clouds. It just doesn't make sense anymore to me, especially as an adult. And when I finally looked up and at 50 years old and drug my head out of the sand and started really looking around at the world that I lived in, I was like, wow, this isn't where I thought I lived. I said, there's a lot of hatred in this world, a lot of division, making people just hate each other over just the way they look or whether they're skinny, fat, you know, rich, poor, different colored skin. You know, oh, I hate that, you know, and this is that divide and conquer method that they've put on us for way before we were born. You know, I mean, this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, well, we just find each other, don't we? We have to find each other because we all know, like, I don't know, just something happens, I don't know, on a level, we all coming together. We know, don't we?
Yeah, I think we,
Unfortunately, you're just going to get these people, and some of them you're going to trust and think they're your friends, and they're not. And the dog eat dog world is in flat. I think there's 3 types of people. Obviously, there's the globe people. There's those that think they're flat earthers, and then there's the flat earthers, because those ones don't have an ego problem, and actually, those ones all want to help each other.
yeah, and that's what I wanted my channel really was to be about, was observational learning. You know, learn from your observations. And you know, I don't know, I got a little depressed, and I did do a lot of complaining about my views, about my, you know, sub count. But you know what, I got to realize one thing, that not everybody's into actually learning from the observations. They just want to, they want to cherry pick what they observe and just put out the good stuff and not put out the bad.
I
But like I
think what you're saying is you put out your channel to do observations and hope that there'd be all these other channels going, well, I've done this, and hey, what, wait, wide awake, da, 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 and you didn't. You got people attacking you. That's what you're saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had a lot of people attack me. I've had, I think it was 2 death threats and a whole bunch of people telling me to go kill myself, and that
You're not
includes
the
some
only
flat
one.
earthers.
You're not the only one there. Sorry, they say horrible things.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you got to learn to take that.
You're uncovering the truth, and there's always going to be a set of people that won't like it.
That's very true. That's very true. There's a lot of hateful people out there that, you know, again, if you've been taught that we live on a ball all your life, and you know, you got to admit, almost every one of us went through the same process to where we looked at flat earth, we laughed, we'd said, ah, it's a joke. But then if you got, you know, serious about it and you started saying, well, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to debunk this flat earth with my first video. And you know, your first video you do, you lok at it, and when you get it home and you look at it on your computer, you say, wow, that ain't what I was, you know, hoping for. And then you go out and do more, and then each time you do it, you say, well, why am I able to see this one day and why I can't see it the next? I mean, I've had such big differences from one day to the next day that it's like, wow. So it started opening up questions, and those questions started just going more to observational proof, and learning how to look at these optical effects that are occurring in my own way, and not by what say a scientist would tell me, oh, that's what you're seeing here is refraction, David. You're not seeing, you're not seeing that building. You're actually just seeing this refracted building being pulled up beyond the curvature of Earth. Really? And it's so clear and it's so visible. No, I could see if it would look like some kind of weird ghostly figure popping up over the curve. I mean, I could maybe agree with that, but when I actually see the building perfectly, nah, I'm not gonna buy somebody telling me that that's refraction.
Hmm.
Pulling it up over. Well, if my camera was at 3 feet, how many? I mean, you'd have to be pulling something way up. 60 feet. I mean, up behind the curve. That's crazy. That's crazy to even think that occurs. But we've been taught this. That's what's crazy, is that we've been taught it. But were we ever given optical observational proof of this occurring?
Something else that just crossed through my mind. Josh Stone. I put a video of his out last night, and when the planes are flying, I think it's, oh my goodness, I'm going to make a mistake now. I'm sure Enslaved by No Media will put me right if I've made a mistake, because he's still in the chat room. When the planes are flying, oh my goodness, which way round is it now? South. I think it's south. The planes often drift across the sky. They're flying straight, but they're drifting, but not the other way. When you're looking north, the planes fly straight, but when they're flying one way, all the planes drift to one side. Have you seen that?
Um, yeah, in a sense. And is he drifting, or is he just going on an angle? And that angle can give you that different appearance. Um, I know after I've watched the sun depart on a couple of my videos, I never shared them, but I zoom in on these planes that are out there, and I actually track them to a certain point. But they get to where you can't resolve the plane. You don't see the plane, but you see the trail that it's making, and you're following this trail right down to the horizon and to that vanishing point. It's crazy. And again, you look at that and you say, well, how far out was that plane actually? I mean, if you can't at full zoom with the P1000,
They've
and the
lied with the
plane is just so tiny, it's crazy. It's
Do you think they've lied with the distances? Like you're not seeing as far as you are seeing a long way, but you're not quite seeing as far as you did, because they've lied with the cameras. They've lied with, like the planes aren't flying 7 miles up and you can almost see it 7 miles up. It's only flying a few miles up. I mean, I feel I agree with all that. I've watched, sorry, I don't mean to sort of bring, because Enslaved sitting in the chat room, but I've watched a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've zoomed in on planes that were directly above me. Believe it or not, right where I live, it's almost like I have a route that goes right in front or right over me practically. It's off to the west a little bit or east a little bit, but they're constantly going over. And I do time lapses on them, or sometimes I'll zoom in on them. And when they're directly above me, it's like, wow, that plane's supposedly way up there, but I can see. I mean, if I try to zoom in completely on the plane, it takes over the whole screen. So I got to back out. Plus, two, it's hard to track them when you're that zoomed in on them.
And they're moving, aren't they?
Yeah, and you say, well, if that plane's that far up there, wow, I'm able to zoom in on this plane that's what, 3-4 miles up, 6 miles up. What do they claim they're flying at? 30,000 feet?
About 37,000 feet is 7 miles, I think. I'm not doing very well, actually. I think Enslaved by No Media will put me right on anything.
Yeah, and I can't see how I can zoom in on that plane and it be up and take over my whole screen. And then when I'm following it out to the horizon, it looks like a little pin dot, in the screen at full zoom. I'm seeing that plane and it's going way farther than what I should be able to see. I mean, if you follow that right to the horizon, I'm able to see that plane. So how far are we actually able to see? It should be the question. We're seeing stuff further out there than we think. We just don't see that hard water line where it should be. Um, Anybody can take their P1000 or their P900 or their B700, which I like this little camera. It's nice and light. It's good for hand holding. But if you put a level on it, say you go and get a square with a level on it, and you level that thing out, and then you use your virtual horizon and you zoom out as far as you can and get that level as possible, you'll see that you're looking well over that visible water line. That's like the Bayport bird rack. I put a level on mine one day and the virtual horizon on, and then used my cell phone to videotape my screen and show people that the actual horizon line is well above that bird rack, because that bird rack, again, we got to remember, gets small with perspective, but that horizon line continues to go out there, and that's where we cannot resolve that area with these cameras. It's just unresolvable.
If we were spinning and rotating and all that, and everything else is moving, would you be able to zoom in and focus?
No, I don't think so. Especially if we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and and the sun's moving at that rate of speed too. It's crazy to think that we could be zooming on a car. Say the sun's a car as it's going by at 1,000 miles an hour, and focus in on it.
Yeah. So what's your next bit of photography going to be about? This video you were hunting for that you got lost in your videos. What are you going to put up next then?
Um, well, basically, I want to kind of go through and pick out specific points where I can show that my camera's at one height pretty much all the time, and I'm zoomed out to these islands and I'm able to see it, and then on other days I'm not able to see it. And again, my idea is not to make somebody into a flat earther. I just present my observations as proof and let them, the viewer, be the judge of what they're seeing. Of course, you don't get a lot of globe people coming to your channel except for these ones that I call a lot of paid trolls. And then every now and then you will get somebody that is interested in these optics that will ask you questions, and a lot of times we scare them away by just blocking them. I know I have blocked some, and maybe prematurely, because they were, I don't think that they were the real McCoy trolls, globe trolls, that are being paid. I think we are being attacked by paid trolls, people in either.
I think YouTube's changed the algorithms and stuff. I have another channel going. It's a bit of a sort of experiment, and I've got 300 odd subs on there, and yet the flurry through that, what I'm talking about, hundreds of people are looking a day. I don't get that with 6,000 subs on Sun and Moon. I don't think it's because people don't come here. We've been on Hangouts lately where we've watched the number go down to 0 in the chat room. And, you might get 10 subs, and then within 5 minutes, 5 or 6 of them have unsubbed.
Yeah.
You never really go anywhere, because as they're subbing, they're unsubbing at the same time. Like, I just don't think that's happening. And I think a lot of people press the bell button. And then, if you've got other channels, there's, like, for instance, there's Enslaved by No Media here, Light and Dogs in there. There's all these other channels. Maybe you get forgotten if the bell thing doesn't show you're on a live hangout. And I just think a load of people are coming to me saying that, oh, you're on my bell thing. I have a bell thing on, but it didn't tell me you were on air. So they just keep doing these things, and they've just done something so that when you search flat earth or anything like that, it doesn't come up. So they're just messing around with flat earth. They're trying to make it look like we're nothing.
Yeah, I've had a lot of my subscribers tell me that they weren't notified, and then when I get some of the comments too, I see I get a comment, and then I go and I click on it, and it's gone. There's nothing there.
Do you
And
know
you
what
know,
that is? That is the person wrote it and then deleted it.
sometimes, and then I've had people say, Dave, I left you messages, and they never came up. And I find that
Yeah, I think that what that is, right? It seems that a lot of the messages to me come to the withheld part. I don't know. I must have set it up like that. But occasionally, I mean, I wish the messages just went on there now. But occasionally, you've got somebody saying something nasty, and that won't show on the channel. So I'll just leave it as it is. But
yeah,
somebody, just say, for instance, you might write to me now. You write to me on the post, your post, and I don't see it because it doesn't come through as a message, but it will be on the channel. You just have to suddenly think, oh, there's all these people have answered. I didn't see them. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean? The way they've set things up.
yeah. And even if you when you click on your messenger first, and you see reply, or says something about comments, manage comments, click on manage comments sometimes, because you'll find stuff in there that's not in your regular community. Um, your spam messages being withheld, for approval. Because I recently found, like, I don't know, it's almost 100 comments that I never even knew I had. And I went down through, and I picked the ones where they were putting in a link to one of their videos, or somebody else's video. And, I check the video out, of course, and then I approve it. Um, and even with this glove guy, Mendel, he put some in there, and I approved them, because I said, well, hey, I think other flat earthers should look at this, because this might explain some of the things.
You don't always like it. You've got to leave people's opinions on there. Myself, if people are rude, it gets deleted, or they're saying, like, you idiot, those get deleted. But if people disagree, I leave those on. I might not
Yeah,
answer them the same way, but I leave them on. But at the moment they're rude, that's it. I'm just not interested.
yeah, me neither. I don't want somebody saying go kill yourself, and approve that. But maybe we should start approving some of them, so people can actually see what these people are actually saying, how hateful their comments can be, especially with my 2 death threats. I mean, I was actually surprised. I was like, wow, you're gonna want to come here and kill me just because I believe something different than you, or my opinion on something is different than yours. I mean, that would be like saying, I don't like Mercedes Benz, and you like Mercedes Benz, so you want to kill me because I don't like them.
It's childish, isn't it? But on the other hand, it's just not very nice. I get different ones. I haven't had many lately, but they usually said things like, don't breed. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a grandma, so it's too late. Like, they're just not very nice. But when you get a few of them, I know that Bling Bling BSFVISS, she's a friend of mine. She did one of these videos, and
I love
she
her.
got hundreds of these vile things, and it sort of changed her a bit. She stopped doing so many videos for a bit because just she couldn't even go through the messages. She stopped going through her messages for that reason, because these nasty things people were saying.
Wow, that's crazy that people have to react so negatively to something that they themselves can't go out and prove that we live on a globe. Now, they might say, well, I can prove it to you by watching the sun. But can you really? I mean, is the sunset really your proof that we live on a globe? I mean, if you know about parallel lines, they converge, and that's exactly what we're seeing, is a convergence of of a light getting to the horizon, and it's just converging on the horizon. We cannot see past that convergence again, and that's the way I look at it. Um, whether somebody agrees with me or not, that's besides the point. That's the way I see it now. After, I gotta say, I probably got thousands, if not thousands upon thousands of observations of the sun that really make you think about that. And plus, too, you go out and you test parallel lines, and sure, you can see where they will converge on themselves.
Are you out every day filming?
as often as I can, believe it or not. Any little spare time, I put off my fishing, because I was like avid fisherman. I'd go twice a week if I could, but I put off a lot of my fishing trips to go out and do my observations. Number one, I do enjoy being outdoors. I've always been an outdoor person, so being outdoors is something that I love. Um, and seeing nature, hearing the birds and the crickets and everything. Getting bit by the bugs, now that's another story. I've been out there before getting eaten alive, but I hung in there just to do my observations because for me, they were important for study, for my own research. Put it that way. My stuff is for my own research. And when I first got into it, I really never, it never dawned on me really to share my research with people. But I thought it was important after I realized that man, everything's just practically a lie that we learned in school. And I'm not saying that science is not, I'm not saying that there's really not good science out there. There is. There's great science out there. I mean, how do we think we're talking on the way we are? It is science, but is some of this science bad or is some of this science good? I mean, when you take into consideration that they put science into making a bomb or an explosive device, a destructive device, is that good or is it bad? People get killed with these things. Wars, who starts the wars? Our government start the wars, create the wars, and the people go and fight them for them. Why? Why are we out there killing total strangers that we have really no idea why we're fighting them? Yeah, because they told us they're commies,
They're only in part of the game. It's all a game we're in. We're just in a game. So everybody's being fed one thing and they don't understand the truth about what it's all about.
I was in the military, and I tell you, I would not, when 9/11 happened, I tried to get back in. I was a little above the age rate, so they wouldn't allow me to go back in. But I was like real patriotic, But then I watched this video, about the 9/11, and man, the more I looked at it, and then I started doing my own research. And I went back and found videos where they're showing how the building was built and all the steel that went into it. And let's face it, back then in them days, they were using really good metal, real good steel, strong steel, fresh, raw minerals that they, created their steel beams with. It wasn't this recycled steel that they're using today to build a lot of shit that don't last very long. But I realized that these buildings could not have fallen at free fall speed like they did. And, then you go and you find out that there's all these engineers that looked at it and they even agree that these buildings shouldn't have fell the way that they did. And then you find, wow, some of these people that
the truth. There's another one.
Yeah, some of these people that was like demolition experts died because they actually said, wow, that looks like a demolition. They died under suspicious causes. And even some of the people that came out, from the buildings that said that there was explosions going on, those people mysteriously died in some strange accidents too. It's like, the red flag goes up and you're starting to say, well, wow, anybody that stands up and says something other than the authoritative narrative, what they're telling us, all of a sudden disappears.
9/11 was about many things, though. It was about so many things. They changed the law. The Patriot Act was brought in, and that was basically you could go and fight in any country you wanted, and you wouldn't be, there'd be no treason on you. I think that's just terrible, isn't it? So pass a law, it means you can go and invade any country you want, and you wouldn't get tried for it and things like that. And you know, what do they want? They want what they've got now. The Twin Towers weren't making any money. It just goes on. There's a list of things, let alone the Middle East, the wars. It's just awful. Well, they don't care about us, do they? We're just an experiment for them in medication, everything. We're just an experiment.
Yeah, we're expendable. They, you know, and I really don't know why. Um, you know, we, I hate to say it, but we Americans, this American country, this American government, I always say it's the government because I think if they asked us for a vote, whether we want to go to war or not with some other country, we'd vote it down. So that's why they don't get a majority vote for going into war. They just go to Congress and say, hey, we want permission to go drop bombs on this. Okay, you know, well, we're not going to call it a war. We're just going to, you know, we're just going to say we were involved. You know, like Vietnam. They never really called it
Call
a
it
war.
defense. Like use some stupid word like that.
Yeah, which is totally is asinine. And if you ask me, I think just about every one of our politicians are nothing but crooks, thieves, and
Yeah, we can't trust many people, can we?
yeah, has our government been infiltrated a long time ago before I was born by you know, and I don't know if I want to say communist party or by, you know, evil people that have gotten themselves in because, you know, if you listen to the speech that President Kennedy made, one of his last big speeches about talking about how secret societies have, you know, infiltrated our government and he was going to expose them. And then, you know, next thing you know, he's being assassinated. Now, he got assassinated like a year before I was born, which, you know, I didn't really know him. But when you listen to that speech, it really makes you think about, did we really get um, infiltrated already, you know, at that time before I was even born? And I think so. I think our government has been infiltrated. Is Trump draining the swamp? That's another question to be made. You know, he said he was going to, and now they're saying that, you know, he's been, you know, working with the Russians, and I think it's the other way around. I think all these people that are accusing him of working for the Russians are actually working for Russia or whoever. I just think that they pit us against each other any which way they can. Now they
Yeah,
might
it's all
not be
about
working for
each other.
Russia.
We don't like each other as people. All the people are against each other. They all hate each other. I think it's called subversion, to be honest, which is a kind of communism. They demoralize the people, make them feel useless and everything, and breaking up families, the whole thing. And then they control you. I think in Russia, they took everything away. And for the West, or whatever you want to call us, it's more to do with money, debt. It's done through money.
Yeah, and you know, if you go around and you know you look at videos from all over the world of the people themselves, they're just like us. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to survive in this world, and you know, then we, you know, our governments pit us against each other again. You know, with all different ways of divide and conquer, every which way you could imagine. And divide and conquer has been used since the beginning of time to just divide the people from each other. Period. The way I look at it, because this has been going on for a lot longer than we can imagine.
Mm. Can I just say, remember I said hour and a half? We've been going for a bit more than an hour and a half.
Oh wow.
That's okay. No, I've really enjoyed it, but I do have to go somewhere shortly myself.
Oh yeah,
Um,
understandable. I was hoping to show some video, but that's quite all right. I think
oh, can you come
we've
back and do that another? Can you come back and do that another day?
yeah, that might be possible. I can't see why not.
I'd
I,
really like that, but we don't have time right now to do the videos,
that's okay. That's okay. Um,
and
and
I see your videos.
and I can understand where you know, we all got things to do.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I'd like you to come back and show us some of your videos. Thank you, everybody in the chat room who's been there, and It's been awesome having a hang out with you. We'll say goodbye on air, and I'll say goodbye to you off air. But thank you so much, Wide Awake. And we've only just tapped the tiny edge of what you do.
Thank you, everybody. And if you do want to learn from observations, I do look at my channel as an observational channel more than just a flat earth channel. You know, what I say and what you see might be two different things, but think for yourself. Don't just go by what I say.
Yeah, thank you very much. Big hugs, big flat earth hugs to everybody, and back next week. See you after the weekend, everybody.